We have reached the halfway mark of season 2013 and the race to the finals is about to begin. The Thunderbirds, Vixens and Firebirds are all strongly poised and stand firm chances to claim their second ANZ Championship titles, while the Magic, Steel, Fever and the Pulse will fight for their lives in the coming weeks as they try to claim a place in the Final Four. It's certainly heating up as I say hello and welcome to Centre Pass, the official video podcast of the ANZ Championship. Dan Ryan here alongside former Australian skipper Kath Harby-Williams, and Kath, three Australian teams at the top of the moment, looking a good chance to make the finals for the first time again since 2008.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, isn't it? And a bit of a concern for the Kiwi sides. And isn't it interesting, Dan, at the beginning of the season, we just assume the Magic will make it. Well, there are no certainties at this stage. If you look at the ladder, the Magic, Steel, Fever and Pulse all on 6 points. The Pulse have the easiest run home. They're playing, after this week, they play the Magic. So let's say they win. They've then got the Mystics, Fever, Tactics twice, and Steel. And they should all be winnable games. So at the moment, the Magic are no certainties, and the Pulse are a really good chance to make it. So it's pretty tight and very hard to predict, but as you said earlier, there's a bit of a way to go yet.
Something very interesting happening in the ANZ Championship. Well, let's recap all of the results from round 7 of the competition. The Queensland Firebirds jumped back on the winners list with a 9-goal win over the West Coast Fever in Brisbane. In a very defensive game, the Melbourne Vixens were far too good for the Central Pulse, taking a dominant 22-goal win. The Canterbury Tactics proved their overtime win a few weeks back was no fluke against the Mystics when they accounted for them by 4 goals, 61-57. Southern Steel star import Janelle Fowler bagged 59 of her team's 60 goals in their 5-goal win over the New South Wales Swifts in Invercargill, and the Adelaide Thunderbirds got their revenge on Magic, beating the defending champions by 12 goals in Adelaide. Checking out the competition ladder as it stands at the halfway mark in the competition, the big talking point, Catherine, 4 teams tied on 6 points in that 4th position.
Yeah, and I talked about the teams that I think are a chance to make it. The Pulse are a good chance. The Steel and the Magic play each other twice over the next few weeks, so that could determine their seasons. They may cancel each other out, or one team may move forward significantly. The Fever, I'm discounting them because they've still got a tough road ahead and play a number of tough Australian sides. So it's really tight and makes it pretty exciting, but it's been exciting all the way along, hasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has, and time now to turn our attention to round 8 of the competition. It's another full round of the championship starting on Saturday in Christchurch. It is the Canterbury Tactics, currently 8th, up against the 3rd placed Queensland Firebirds. The Tactics coming off their 2nd win of the season. The Firebirds 9-goal winners over the West Coast Fever. It will be a battle of attack ends, so to speak. Harbs defensively, it will be a test for both sides.
Yes, I think so, but you've got to look at some of the statistics because they do tell the story at times, and the Firebirds are the best scoring team in the competition. They shoot 63 goals a match at 87%. The Tactics, on the other hand, one of the weakest defensive units. So, you know, that tells me that the Firebirds are going to shoot a significant number of goals, and the Tactics won't be able to counteract that because their attacking end isn't nearly as strong as the Firebirds.
How did you see the Firebirds midcourt? We know Chelsea Pittman out for a couple of weeks. She's the most experienced player in that part of the court, but they coupled her with Nicola Gray. How did you see it?
Yeah, look, I think she's slotted in quite well. A lot of people thought that perhaps without Pittman, the Firebirds may fall down a rung or two, but I think Gray is maintaining a steady ship. I still think if Pittman comes in, they will be a better side, particularly when it comes to finals. If they're in there, she's got that experience and that steady nature about her play. But, you know, they're coping okay.
Moving on to our next game, the West Coast Fever hosting the Adelaide Thunderbirds in Perth on Sunday afternoon. The Fever coming off a loss to the Firebirds. They were very competitive for the first half, fell away in that 3rd quarter. The Thunderbirds getting their first win over the Magic in 2 seasons, so they're full of confidence. The last time these two teams met, it was a 26-goal win for the Adelaide Thunderbirds in Adelaide. The Fever perhaps a little gun-shy coming off that game against the Magic. Different team at home though. Yes,
they are. Look, they're a 20-goal better side at home, which is absolutely significant, but I just think the Thunderbirds are on an absolute roll. I think the Fever struggle with a lack of leadership. You know, they can play 2 really good quarters. They rely on Cox. If she falls out of the game, there's no one there to pick up the slack, and if you look at the better sides, they've got strong leaders. The Thunderbirds, for instance, Bully, Lomberto, Hallinan. You look at the Vixens, they've got Chatfield, Mentor, McMahon. So I think that's an area where the Fever are really lacking. And Norma Plummer during the week said that, you know, she in the game against the Firebirds last week in the 3rd quarter, she felt like stripping down and putting on the uniform and getting out there, and that's how desperate they were. I'd hate to see that.
Get out there, Plum, we'd love to see it. Well, the next game we want to have a look at is the New South Wales Swifts have had a very rough start to the season up against the Melbourne Vixens. It's 9th versus 2nd. The Swifts have not won a game since their opening round performance against the West Coast Fever. The Vixens coming off a 22-goal smashing of the Central Pulse. These two teams are long-term rivals. An interesting stat, Kath, the Swifts beat the Vixens twice last year. But it's a very similar team the Swifts have this year, but it's a shadow of their former selves from 12 months ago.
Yeah, they're just trying to work out what's gone wrong because they haven't had a significant change in terms of personnel. And yes, last year they were a team that, although they didn't make the finals, you knew that they had the capacity to knock off some of the big guns. And when it came to the Vixens, they were always coming to the party. So I just don't think they're going to be able to get it together before the end of the season. And I saw the Vixens against the Pulse the other day, and they were on song. They and the Thunderbirds are the teams to beat at the moment.
Karen Howarth made her return from a couple of weeks out from a knee injury. Both knees were heavily strapped, but they opted to put McMahon out there in the second quarter. She made a huge difference. She's really starting to find her feet out there, Cheryl McMahon.
Coming good, and not before, I guess a lot of people wanted to see it early, but by the time the finals come around, they are going to be very difficult to beat because they've got a three-pronged attack, and that's what happened against the Pulse the other day. They were struggling with Howarth, who on another day could produce the goods, but if it's not working, they've got an option to completely change their style of play, and they caught the Pulse on the back foot, and as a result they just forged ahead, and the Pulse were just in chase mode the rest of the game.
So that is the New South Wales Swifts hosting the Melbourne Vixens in Sydney on Sunday. Turning now attention to a game in Auckland is the Northern Mystics taking up the last place on the ladder up against the Southern Steel on the cusp of the top four. The Mystics dead last after their loss to the Tactics to Steel, just on the cusp there, Catherine, of the four. They met in round 6. It was a 15-goal win for the Steel. This really is all about stopping Janelle Fowler, but perhaps the Mystics don't have the personnel to do that, like most teams in the competition.
Look, can we talk about Fowler again? She is breaking record week in, week out. Her team scores 60 goals and she shoots 59 of them. That's absolutely phenomenal. And she's lucky because Jodie Brown would be one of the best feeders in the competition, so she just complements her immensely. So the opposition know what's going to happen in terms of their game plan, but she's just too good. She's Aitken, and perhaps in time is going to be better than her. She just seems a little bit stronger and a little bit taller, and she's virtually unstoppable. And yes, if you look at the Mystics, they're the worst defending team in the competition. They let through 70 goals on average. The least number of goals they let through is 60, so they're just not going to be able to stop Fowler, and I don't think their shooting end is playing well enough to score enough goals to get more than Fowler and Brown are going to put up.
How important is defence for the Southern Steel? We know it's going to come close, may come down to percentage to make that top four. We know they score a lot of goals through Fowler. It really is crucial that they have restricting as many possible goals to keep that percentage up.
Yeah, without question. And Rasmussen and Tony Fitzpatrick are doing a good job. If they do make the finals, do they have the experience and enough talent to really counteract the opposition? But I guess you've got to give some to take some. So yes, their defence may not be as strong as some of the other teams, but they've got a shooting end that's just as good, if not better. So I think their defence end is surprising people, and if they can continue to stand up, they'll certainly knock off some of the big sides.
A big game on Monday night will be the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic hosting the Central Pulse. These two teams met only a couple of weeks ago. It was a 1-goal win to the Central Pulse. Both teams coming off heavy losses respectively. The Magic kept their lowest ever score, I think it was, against the Adelaide Thunderbirds. Both teams, though, at the moment, Kath, have been talked about in the pre-season about being the best two New Zealand teams, but both are in dangerous territory with the amount of losses they've had, and we're only halfway through the season. Yeah,
and hence the importance of this game. It's really going to make a difference in terms of the end of season result, and I still think the Pulse are going to rue that loss to the Mystics. But you look at their game the other day, you saw the T-Birds. They kept the Magic to 33 goals, but the Thunderbirds still only shot 45, so when the ball keeps coming back and back and back, that's not a bad defensive effort from the Magic. And the same with the Pulse. They only shot 30 goals, but they kept the Vixens to 52, so it's not as if the defence let the game get away from them. So what it tells me, how Van Dijk and Thwaites are counteracted. Both of those players ended up on the bench during their game, so they obviously didn't have a great game. How does De Bruyne counteract Thwaites, and how does Grant counteract Van Dijk? Whoever wins that battle, I think, will win that game.
A huge game, almost a mini final in itself. The Magic there hosting the Central Pulse. Time now to turn our attention to our tipping competition. I've jumped ahead by 2 halves. You backed the Pulse, they let you down. These are my tips for round 8 of the competition. I'm backing the Queensland Firebirds to beat the Canterbury Tactics comfortably, the Thunderbirds over the West Coast Fever, the Vixens too good for this year's New South Wales Swifts, the Steel will have too much firepower in that front line for the Northern Mystics, and I'm backing the Magic to respond better than the Central Pulse on Monday night. Harbs, take us through it.
This was one of the easiest rounds to pick, I found, because there's only one difficult game. I agree with you in the first 4. The Magic Pulse is the tough one. And because you picked who? The Magic?
Yep.
I'm going for the Pulse, even though they let me down last week.
All right, well, I wish you luck, Harbs. All the best to you. Thank you very much for joining us on this week's episode of Centre Pass. That's all we have time for. Make sure you check out the ANZ Champs website for all of the broadcast details for round 8 of the competition. Until next week, enjoy the netball.